Cool, man. Awesome. All right. So yeah, welcome to the Mercury Serpent podcast. My name is Vince and I am your host today. And I have a guest here with me, Johnathan White. How are you doing,
Yo, what's up,
Jonathan?
Vince?
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man.
Good, good. Thank you for being here. I'm actually very excited for our conversation today because we're gonna be talking about energy healing for men. And to me personally, this has been like my passion in the past. I would say like 5 years or so, ever since like COVID happened. I'm really grateful to have you on this topic because I feel like this is kind of like everything coming back in circle because you are like the very first person that taught me Qigong like ever, right? Um, I still remember the very first moment when I bought your sexual kung fu training course was like 2020, I believe, right middle of COVID. And at that time, all I knew was I bought a course, but man, like little did I know, like that course became the thing that I do every day. And I mean, yeah, to be honest, like Qigong has been like a very essential part of my lifestyle these days. Learned a lot about myself from it. I learned to through Qigong, I learned to overcome my like porn addictions. Through Qigong, I learned how to really like connect to my sexual energy in a healthy way and really to how to channel that sexual energy, right, in a way that I would like, so I can attract the things that I want in my life. And the journey so far has been so amazing. I'm so excited for it. And now, fast forward 5 years later, here I am, right, working as a coach for your team, under your team, Jonathan, and now having you under my podcast talking about energy healing. So just kind of like crazy how all the stars just align. So it
It's
makes me
awesome,
really
man.
happy. Yeah.
Vince, I remember, I remember when you joined the group, and like as things progressed, I'm like, oh, this dude's serious. You can always tell like the ones who are really doing it, they're really getting it, and they're on it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, this dude's got it. He's doing it. And then after years of this, I'm like, okay, it's time to jump on Vince, and you help other men go
Yeah.
through the same transformation as well. So yeah, man, honored to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. So yeah, I'm super excited to get into the questions with you today. But real quick before that, could you like just quickly give us an intro of who you are and what you do?
Well, I am Johnathan White, and I basically help men learn to master their sexual energy so they can create an epic life for themselves. And I do that using mostly Taoist methods, Qigong, meditation, breath work. I'm an internal energy junkie, as we'll get into, but that's the core of what I do is helping men transform their relationship to sexual energy from being this unconscious force that's just driving them to addictive, impulsive behavior and turning that into a fuel for creativity, for success, for alignment, for deeper layers of their soul and their mission, their purpose. So that's me. That's what I'm doing.
That's awesome, man. Cannot wait to break down further into everything you just mentioned here. So, but yeah, thanks for the intro. So yeah, let's get right into it. So my first question here, Jonathan, is so let's kind of like take it way back, right? Way back in the days before the Jonathan White lifestyle days, before the sexual kung fu days. How did you find out about Qigong or like energy work in the first place?
you know, it's I think this goes back to like my early 20s. When I was a musician, I was trying to be a full-time musician. I was kind of a starving artist at the time. And I was getting into like some mystical, esoteric things because I took some psilocybin mushrooms when I was like 19 years old and just like exploded my brain open to this whole other reality. And I spent the next few years being like, how do I get back to that space? Like, what was that all about? Um, and there was this musician that I listened to. His name was Michael Hedges. He's kind of a cult, famous, in a weird corner of music. This really amazing musician that I was all about at the time. Kind of a hippie guy, but he would talk about. He's like, I do yoga. I do this thing called qigong. I'm like, it's like building my energy. I'm like, oh, that sounds badass. But it wasn't until a few years later, when I was about 22 years old, something like that, and I had like a shoulder injury, just like something was wrong with my shoulder, and I was playing guitar for like 3 hours a day at that time. So this was a problem. It was keeping me from my art, and so I remember this dude Michael Hedges talking about yoga and how it was good for his body. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna try yoga. And I got into yoga for a few years, but I got a lot of benefit from it. But I was like, as I was hearing about this concept of like, they're talking about chakras and prana and energy, I'm like, it's cool, but it's still just this theoretical concept. I'm like, there must be some way to have this experience of it. And um, and I kept, hearing about this Qigong thing every now and then. And I was like, I'm gonna give this a try. And at this point, I was into Kundalini yoga. I'm doing breath of fire, just trying to jam all this energy up to blow it out my crown. And this practice was making me a little bit ungrounded, a little bit delusional. I wasn't very well connected to my physical body and reality in general. So I was like, okay, something's not right here. So I was like, I'm going to give Qigong a try. And I found this book. I've got it right here somewhere by Lam Cam Chuen. It's called The Way of Energy. And it's about a specific Qigong practice, which is Zhuang, which is it's a standing meditation. You put your body, I know you're well versed in this, but you put your body in a position and you just stand there and kind of meditate for, initially I was doing it for about 10 or 15 minutes at a time. And right away, because at the time I was like, all right, I'm going to do this practice every day for, I think it was either a week or a month. And then I'm going to see how I feel and determine whether I want to continue. And by the end of the first week, I was like, damn, like this is profound. The practice itself was a bit, it was difficult at the time. It's like your arms get tired, your mind starts to race. But after the practice, I felt fantastic. Like I felt grounded. My energy was improving. I just felt a lot more like emotionally stable and just, I felt centered. I felt good. And I wasn't really having this experience of like tangible energy at this point, but the benefits I got were enough to keep me practicing. Um, so in the beginning, I was just learning from books and videos, but it's that it was funny that first week or month of like I'm going to try this thing out. I haven't stopped since then. That was what 11, 12 years ago, and I'm still doing it every single day. So maybe that speaks to I'm getting some benefit from it still.
No, most 100%. And that's cool that you kind of like mentioned about like, how I think some of the teaching or the teacher or influence you had at that time, they were kind of like spiritual and hippie and kind of like too out of touch with reality. And you found another practice that's actually a lot more, I would say, connected to your physical body. And I think that's actually a very interesting, I feel like, dynamic in this whole like new age kind of like spirituality trend, because I think a lot of friends that I know who are into the hippie lifestyle, they are very out of touch with your reality. They kind of like all they care about is kind of like blasting their chakra open and be somewhere up there, right? And then for me, that's why like Qigong is such an incredible practice, what allows you to be there, but also like be grounded first and kind of like build up your foundation. So that's actually cool that you mentioned that point. And that's a good story to it, how you found out what Qigong. Um, so yeah, so my next question to you then, Jonathan. So ever since that very first like Qigong a session that you had with the John Zhuang practice, how has your experience been like ever since then? I know you mentioned a few things about like like pursuing, like teaching other books and stuff. So could you share with us like maybe like your practices, maybe your journey starting with the teachers, or even your experience teaching and coaching this stuff yourself, right? How's that been like for you?
All right, we'll go through the whole thing. We'll go through the whole thing. Well, I'll spare some. Anyways, so yeah, after my first introduction, which was like it was from books. I was following some videos. I think it was about a year, maybe 2 years of that. I was kind of learning from books and videos, and again, I was getting a lot of benefits. I was loving the practice, but I was like, I still feel like I'm a newbie. I still feel like I'm an amateur. There's a lot more to learn. I'm like, I need a teacher, and when see, it was 2016, and I was going through a lot of chaos in my life. Like Qigong had helped me a lot, but there was basically, I went through this breakup with this woman, and just kind of realized like I'm just kind of floating through life. Like I'm still very like my energy is very unfocused in like what am I doing here in the world, and so everything just kind of came together where I'm like, all right, it's time to go study with the teacher. And there's this guy named Michael Wynn, that I had been following some of his material, like reading his online articles and thing, because he co-wrote a lot of Montauk Chia's books, like it's right here, the Taoist Secrets of Love book, Montauk Chia and Michael Wynn. So I'm looking up this guy. I'm like, okay, he's in the U.S. and I don't know, he seems kind of weird, but he's teaching these summer retreats, and so I flew out for a week to study at his retreat, and it was a huge pivotal point in my journey of qigong and working with internal energy, because it's one thing just to be like reading it in books and videos, it's great, like a lot of people can practice their whole life from that, but I'm kind of an obsessive type. I'm like, I want to go all the way into something. And so being in the presence of someone who's living this, teaching it, there's just a deeper level of exchange and interaction. So this week, I'm learning about the energy channels, how to cultivate qi, and we're doing qigong all day. And I just felt fantastic, just fantastic. I think another big pivotal point was that my practice went from something that I was kind of making myself do, like, well, okay, I got to do my qigong, but it still felt a bit tedious a lot of the time. What changed when I went and studied with Michael Wynn was that I experienced how qigong it's a living, breathing, organic art. It's like you interacting with the energy field, interacting with these various levels of your mind, and like using your body as this conduit for life force to come in. And it's like, and I started to see, it's like, I'm playing with the energy. I'm like a child again, playing in this massive field of qi and like releasing old, stuck patterns, negative emotions, limiting beliefs, and bringing in this just like joyous, euphoric, blissful energy. And so that's when I really became a qi addict. And so I came home from this completely transformed. And I started, I remember at the time, I was like a line cook in a restaurant, and I would get off work around 3 p.m. I would jump on my bike and ride to a local park, and I would practice qigong for like the rest of the day. I'd be out there for hours, 2 or 3 hours, just doing qigong in the park, and that was my life for a while, for that summer. And then I started teaching. A year after that, I became certified as an instructor, and because I really had this message of like, specifically like, people's sexual energy is it's a little bit contaminated. People are very controlled by this. Basically, the transformation I went through, because a large part of my training was working with sexual energy as well, and like turning, like I said, turning this into a force of positive growth and a deeper intimacy with yourself and your partner. So I really felt like I've got to share these practices with the world. And so I started teaching, and I just started started making YouTube videos talking about semen retention and non-ejaculatory orgasms. And, and I was a very shy, timid guy. That was like 8 years ago, and I'm just kind of making these videos, but there was a lot of interest very quickly. And then a year later, I launched this comprehensive course, Multi-Orgasmic Man. You took a kind of a more refined version of that program, and there was a lot of interest in it. And basically that's when I transitioned to like becoming a full-time teacher. It just happened. I didn't intend for it to happen. Clearly the universe was pulling me in that direction. And but there was a point, it was about 2018, 2017, 2018, where I felt like I was kind of hitting a plateau in my practice. Like I was getting, tons and tons of benefits, but specifically, I was like, I don't feel like I'm having this strong, like tangible experience of like really feeling qi in my body. Like, I feel like that should be happening just based on like these books I'm reading and things other people are saying. And so this is when I really opened myself up to like, okay, I want to like, I'm a student of this art, and I want to study as much as I can. I want to learn from as many teachers as I can. I want to go just deep, 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 deep into this thing. And it was funny, as soon as I had that intention, kind of like, I remember speaking it aloud too. I'm like, I'm ready for my next teacher or like teachers. And first of all, I was out in the park practicing one day, and this guy comes up to me and he's like, oh, it's like, you're doing some qigong. He's like, do you mind if I show you something? And he showed me how to like, really sink my energy into the earth. And like, I'm pushed on him. I can't budge him. I'm like, badass dude. I'm like, will you teach me? So his name's Jude Trapp, and he became one of my Tai Chi teachers. I found some other material. So I started training in some really cool systems, and I started really feeling like how to feel qi, not just in my hands. You start doing qigong, you feel it in the hands, but after some time, like developing the lower dantian, this lower energy center, and just opening up the body, I started to feel these like, to me, it feels like an electrical radioactive hydraulic fluid moving through the body. I started to feel this full body experience of chi. Um, and really that process I've talked about of like, I want to study with as many teachers and go as deep into this art as I can. I'm still in it. You know what I mean? I've learned a lot since then. But I'm still like, I'm always keeping that beginner's mindset. I'm like, until I'm like levitating and like shooting lightning bolts out of my hands, clearly I have more to learn. So I'm
Yep.
going to continue to be a student of the art.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. This is such a great story, man. Thank you for kind of like summarizing everything in there. Like man, I have so many thoughts that I have, but a few things really kind of like jumped out for me is I think when you mentioned like you know, the Qigong was a way that for you you found that was really helpful for you personally, and also helping the man in the world to really like overcome this challenge with sexuality, right? You know, because I wholeheartedly believe in that as well. And I mean that's the reason why I signed up for your course years ago, because I was dealing with that myself, and that it's still a journey for me, you know. But I think the more that I kind of really work on, for one, like connecting back to my own sexual energy, but two, learning how to, just like you said, right, kind of like going back to that like inner child and just being free, unconditional love, free from all this societal kind of like programming we receive. I'm really feeling that release from my system. And it's just kind of like over time, just not like anything like super profound, but like every month, every kind of like the time goes by, I feel like little parts of me is kind of like leaving, and I'm so like new parts of me are building. Um, so yeah, I think that, and I do want to ask you a little bit more about that too. But thank you for bringing it up, because um, I guess like the one of the specific audience I'm really trying to reach to with this podcast is number one, men in general. And I think specifically, I think in the energy healing space, we have a lot of women in there. You know, I feel like women, I think in their conscious journey, I think they're a little bit ahead of men, I think in this timeline. But I think now like we seeing this surge of a conscious man, awakened man, start trying to just catch themselves, catch their own pattern, catch the behavior, and learn how to become a better version of themselves. So to me, like that audience is dear and personal to me. And I think the second part about like, I think like men and young men like struggling with kind of like that negative sexual programming from society. But now, hey, they have an alternative, right? They can kind of like look at things that you do, things that maybe other men do in this world that are like kind of gearing towards having a healthier relationship with their sexuality. To me, that's really amazing. That's healing for our human race to so many levels. So that's awesome.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, actually now we kind of talking about like healing, right? I want to ask you specifically about your experience using energy to heal yourself. Maybe like can you break it down a little bit more, so maybe for those who aren't really familiar with Qigong energy work, so they can understand like how someone could use energy to heal themselves. Maybe any like personal stories or profound experiences you want to share for the audience so they know.
Right. So, I mean, to start with the theoretical, and I'll get into like maybe some stories. The whole thing is that in my experience and my opinion, well, and really like even science understands this now. Everything is energy. Like our bodies, it seems like this physical dense thing, but our bodies are actually 99.9% empty space. Everything around us is 99.9% empty space. So physicality is just an illusion. Um, we've just been programmed to see things as just in the physical. But what I really like about qigong and like the Chinese medicine, the Taoist system is it's very practical. It's very scientific, I would say, in a sense, and it's extremely like organized and systemic. So there, in the view, the Taoist model, the human body is comprised of these pathways that energy flows in, like rivers, and that's what's underlying our physical body. And another analogy I use all the time is like, you think of the internet, for example. Everything that's on the internet, everything that's ever been on the internet is literally floating through the air in the space you're in right now, through the cloud. It's mind blowing. But our computers take that information and kind of crystallized into this form. So like you hear my voice, you can see the video if there's a video, et cetera. So it's like that energy is turned into something we can actually interact with. And this is what our bodies do, is they take in information from this energy field around us, and we interpret that as sounds, as sights, like, oh, I'm touching this thing. So this is kind of the basis of what we're working with. But again, coming back to Chinese medicine, they have these specific pathways called energy meridians that flow through the body. And the understanding is that basically when your meridians are freely flowing, like a river just freely flowing, not too much, not too little, you feel good. You feel healthy. This is why when we're little kids, we feel fantastic. We're like super excited. We're joyful. We're healthy. And we can go from being like, super pissed off at our best friend to like 5 seconds later, being happy and getting along with them instead of like holding these resentments for months and years. It's because when we come to this world, we're fresh, we're wide open, everything's flowing properly. But pretty much inevitably what happens is once we start to experience negative emotions, traumatic patterns, or like we kind of get these limiting beliefs instilled in from our parents and teachers and everything. We love them. They're doing their best, but like they put their limitations on us. These things constrict our life force. So it's like it starts to put a rock in that river, and you put enough rocks in the river, it becomes a dam, and that it has to kind of barely make its way through. And so the understanding of Chinese medicine is that all of illness, all disease is based on an imbalance of qi flow, of energy flow. If there's not enough going to this organ, it becomes deficient and it has a problem. If there's too much, for example, it's common to have too much energy going up in the head. You feel stressed out, overwhelmed, anxiety, insomnia, et cetera. So when you can correct and balance these flows of energy, this is essentially the key to health. And I'm fortunate that I haven't had any like major illnesses, or some people it takes like a chronic illness for them to get onto this path, and then they maybe they heal it. Like I've met many people who cured cancer and all kinds of crazy chronic illnesses that Western medicine cannot cure, using essentially Qigong practices, internal energy training. And personally, what I was struggling with was a lot of, I would say, emotional health illness, mental types of illness, right? I struggled with depression. I struggled with anxiety. I had terrible self-esteem, terrible self-doubt. I was really stuck in my life. I was impulsive and addictive. Like I used to take drugs, substances. I used to like snort pills and things in my rock and roll days, So I had a lot of unhealthy patterns, and practicing, getting into Qigong, like it started with my yoga practice, definitely, but Qigong was like where it was the biggest needle mover for me, like pretty quickly too. Like I said, when I started practicing it, my energy improved dramatically. Emotionally, I became a completely different person. Like I was no longer kind of weighed down with all this like depression and anxiety and blah, blah, blah. I started to feel good again. I think you kind of mentioned this, talking about like how we're taking all this programming, all this conditioning out of us. It's like when you practice Qigong, you're going back in time. It's like most people in their life, it's like this linear curve from like childhood being wide open to like, well, then we get conditioned. Like now I have this belief. I'm a Democrat and you're a Republican, so you have to be my enemy. It's, just one example of like, we become so polarized and rigid and stuck. And then by the time we're an adult, our back's stiff and our shoulders are hunched up because we're so stuck in our energetic patterns. And there's so much tension and constriction. But when you do Qigong, you open things back up. You let go of, it's like the Tao Te Ching. I think it's the Tao Te Ching. They say that, it's like the intellectual man accumulates something new every day, but the sage lets go of something new every day. And this is the path to immortality. It's like the more you can let go of this conditioning, this rigid opinions, and like, oh, I have to be this, therefore I can't be that. Mm-hmm. This is going back in time. because once again, when we're children, we're brand new. We don't have all these rigid patterns, and therefore life force can flow freely through us. Our cup is empty. So it's like through Qigong, you're emptying your cup back up. So instead of just being stuck in your head with all these thoughts and beliefs, you become an empty conduit for pure life force to flow through you. It's my understanding and
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, no, man, that's actually a beautiful analogy that you mentioned about the river and putting rocks in there, and the more rocks in there, you get stuck into a dam, and like next thing you know, like nothing is flowing through. Blood is not flowing through, energy is not flowing through, and now that body part is dead, you know. Wow, so thank you for that. Actually, that's such a great analogy. Um, and then yeah, man, I think so many things you mentioned in there. I think another thing that really jumped out for me is, like I think, yeah, like, like the when it comes to like using energy to heal, right? Like kind of you mentioned like some people can heal very extreme diseases like a cancer, which you gone, which is great, and we see those cases out there. But also I think like that's counting healing only from a physical perspective. But even like yourself, right? Even though you didn't really suffer from any physical illness per se, but you deal with anxiety and depressions and maybe like chronic tension in your body. And I feel like those kind of things are the things that everyday people like us, we all experience, right? So I think having some way for us to manage that in itself is healing already, because I just to your point, the more we can pull out of that state of being depressed and being anxious and now going back to being as much of your inner child as you can, then life force will flow through and your body just regenerate on its own. So yeah, no, I think that's such a great point. And then for me, with my personal experience, like learning from you and practicing Qigong, I can definitely attest to that. Like the healing of Qigong and energy is I feel like it permeates your being through so many layers, so many levels.
It changes you, man. It changes you
Yeah,
in a
100%.
positive way.
Yeah, yeah, hugely positive. Um, so yeah, so that's healing, right? And I want to talk about specific, and I think it's more of your niche. When it comes to like sexual kung fu and Jonathan, what lifestyle, what do you do? But for men specifically, right? We do semen retention. And I know that what you do is very special because before I met you, actually, I did like, semen retention and no fap before. And I also have met and work with people who do energy work, but has no interest or haven't even heard of semen retention. So can you kind of help us understand a little bit more about like what semen retention is for those who don't know and how that may benefit someone's like energy practice?
Great question. So yeah, it's funny. I'm so used to, I've been doing this for 11 years, and this is a normal everyday thing for me. Of course, you shouldn't ejaculate like frequently, but I forget for some people, like going back to what it was like starting. It's like, what do you
Hmm.
mean semen?
Yep.
Why would I want to do that?
Yeah,
So that
exactly.
sounds torturous. But so the whole thing here is that it's understood by many spiritual traditions, Taoist being a major one, Chinese medicine. It's understood that there's a loss of energy when a man ejaculates because the semen is this incredibly refined substance. Like the body is concentrating a lot of nutrients, resources to create the semen. In Ayurveda, they talk about how it's like something like it takes 80 drops of blood to create one drop of semen. And and also in like Taoist alchemy, they talk about this like yang spark, which is it's part of your jing, which is like your physical essence. It's your reserves of energy that you have for your body to keep reproducing itself and keep functioning. And once it's gone, it's gone. So it takes a piece of your jing to create semen. So every time you ejaculate, you're losing a bit of that. And it's even in scientific understanding, like more physiological understanding, there's certain things that happen when you ejaculate. Uh, when a man ejaculates, the body releases a hormone called prolactin. This is the hormone that's strongest when women are breastfeeding, and it makes you feel fatigued. It inhibits your testosterone. So testosterone drops, your dopamine also drops after an ejaculation, and prolactin goes up. So you feel very lethargic. You might even feel depressed. Like I remember getting to a point in my early 20s where after an ejaculation, I just felt like empty and depressed. I was like, this doesn't feel very good. And with sexual health being at an all-time low, testosterone levels being lower than ever, and they're getting lower every single year for men, I think one major contribution to this is excessive ejaculation, because porn overstimulates you sexually to want to ejaculate more and more and more. Like usually you wouldn't, you'd be like, okay, I'm good. Maybe 2 or 3 days later, naturally the desire comes back, depending on your age and everything. But with porn, it's like, okay, I busted a nut. And then 30 minutes later, you're watching more porn just to like try to get one off again. So it just overstimulates, and essentially you release your gene. You lose life force through an ejaculation. But the good news is that what sexual kung fu is all about, is you learn to separate ejaculation from sexual pleasure, from orgasm even, because these are actually two different things. And if you think about it, how an orgasm is it's kind of a dispersal, or it's a buildup and a release of energy. Well, the reason why most men only experience ejaculatory orgasms is, number one, because they've kind of conditioned themselves to. They didn't realize there was another pathway. So the only way for the energy to move is out the genitals. Well, what we're doing in sexual kung fu is we're opening up these other pathways. So by opening up these energy channels, your sexual energy also is able to flow through them. So basically what you can do is draw the energy upwards through the rest of your body, so you experience this full body buildup of pleasure and orgasm instead of losing anything. So this is how you start having non-ejaculatory orgasms. And so basically the whole dynamic of sex changes. Now you can have sex or self pleasure as much as you want, and you're not losing energy from it. Plus there's no refractory period. So it's one thing I love about like a lot of the Taoist practices is that it's like everything you can do, they figured out ways to like, okay, well, how do we do this in a way that benefits, that we like cultivate ourselves with, sex being a way of like, well, how do I do this in a way that I don't lose something from it, but I gain from it? And another important part of this being that your sexual energy is your creative potential. It's the most powerful energy available to us. I mean, just think about it. Like, how do you feel when you're aroused, when you're turned on? There's a definite shift, and it's such a driving force for people's lives. It drives them to do all these sometimes strange things. And when the whole thing we're trying to do is capture that energy and direct it in a way that we choose. So when you put that into other things than just trying to get off, you have all this other energy available to you. Like, I feel like this was the biggest shift for me, when going from masturbating to porn every day to all of a sudden having like immense focus and immense ambition and drive that maybe like pursue my dreams and accomplish things I would have thought impossible 10 years ago. So you're transmuting that energy into success, into better health. It's good for your health. It keeps you young, not ejaculating frequently, essentially. So I could go on and on and on, but I think this is a basic understanding of this.
Yeah, no, man, that's a great summary, I think, in terms of breaking down what it takes the body to produce semen. And so people can understand why is it important to preserve that, right? And I'm glad you brought up the part of kind of like using it, the energy towards someone else or something else, sorry, because my personal experience with no fap, and I'm sure like a lot of guys who are similar or who are familiar with like sexual kung fu, they can attest to the same thing. But like I think semen retention doing on his own. I mean, like men in the past, I feel like have done that. But it comes with a lot of side effects, the irritation, right? The headaches, the restlessness feeling. And it makes sense because like you're retaining a lot of energy, so you do have a lot of energy going in your body. But now it's like I don't know what to do with all the energy, right? So I think that what you teach with Qigong really comes into the part where now with breath work, with intention, with visualization of the mind, you can actually learn how to mold the energy, right? And kind of like shape that into whatever you want. So that I think that it's definitely I feel like that the key things that a lot of masculine development training out there I feel like don't have, because myself I went through like all kinds of masculine development courses out there, And I feel like when it comes to like men's training or development, we're always like discipline, discipline, discipline. Let's push through this. This is, you know, no pain, no gain, right? But then they don't talk about like, okay, but like there must be like an easier way to do this. And literally, like you said, the Taoists, they figure out how to way to have sex and enjoy sex and while still benefiting from it. Because I feel like so many religion and spiritual practices, they kind of like put a sinful connotation on sex, like, oh, sex is bad, or it's only meant for reproductive purposes only. And if you indulge and you're a bad person, right? And I feel like that does more harm than good because now it's like people's like, well, I don't know what to do now. I still have all this desire, but I don't know what to do about it. And when I go to church or when I go to my spiritual friend and I'm being told I'm being a bad person. So like I can't win it either way, right? So yeah, I think that Qigong, at least for me, like just like how you described for your own experience, but for me, like it was eye-opening. I'm like, wow, okay, I don't have to sit here and feeling horny and irritated all day. I can actually use this energy to fuel my gym session later on today, right? So yeah, that's very amazing. Um,
Couple,
so
what one thing I
yeah,
just
go
wanted
ahead.
to wanted to add, and yeah, I love what you're saying. I totally agree. I just forgot to mention that my philosophy is not one of like you can never ever ever ejaculate. That's not
Mm,
it. Basically, the understanding is like uh, if you're there's certain intervals you can ejaculate at. It's like obviously if single ejaculation was going to kill you, you'd be dead from it. We'd all be
mhm,
dead by now. But the whole thing is like think of it as like refilling your bucket. And it's like if an ejaculation, it releases a few drops, obviously over time you've emptied your bucket. So practicing retention, you're kind of building it back up drop by
mhm,
drop. And so if you let's say every day you go without ejaculating, you're putting 3 drops in, and maybe an ejaculation is like 5 drops out. So as long as you're
mhm.
the whole thing is like you're just not ejaculating frequently, essentially.
Right, right.
So it's not a like suppression. It's wrong to do this. It's just like, hey, let's start redirecting it, open up some pathways. Because when you do sexual kung fu, like for me, it became natural to like not want to ejaculate anymore because it felt better not to, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think a way to look at that is like I think maybe just listen to your body to like after you either you ejaculate and do you feel like okay, you feel like still energized and yeah, maybe you're okay, but if you feel like really tired and you don't want to do anything then or you want to go to sleep, then yeah, chances are your energy is a little low. Um, so yeah, so no, we kind of like touch a little bit about kind of like men and kind of like impact of I guess like societal programming on us when it comes to our sexuality. So my next question to you is for I would say like the younger men, the younger generation of men who are looking for like healthier ways to engage with their sexuality, right? Maybe they're at this point where they realize like, hey, maybe porn isn't the best thing out there, but they don't know any better, right? All their friends are talking about porn, or OnlyFans become so normal these days. I guess what would you recommend on a very general advice, like what would you recommend in terms of someone who wants to explore their sexuality in a healthier way?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is just making it a very embodied thing. This is one of the biggest problems right now is that there's so much information, there's so much stimulation from the internet, we have AI, and like more than ever, just all this information just going into our heads. People are just living up here in their heads, overthinking, and this is the biggest drain of your energy is thinking. And in sexuality, it's like again, people are just overstimulated. They're watching porn. It's like you could be clicking on a new video every 5 seconds, and it just fries your dopamine receptors. So the more you can make this like not like external stimulation, unless you're with a partner, which is that's a natural organic connection. But the more you can think of this as just like getting into your body and also releasing tension from your body, because just talking about non-ejaculatory orgasms, the simplest way to open up to full body pleasure is to relax your body. We often have a lot of these tension patterns we're not even aware of. And so as you're experiencing sexual pleasure, whether you're by yourself or with a partner, just think of like, how deeply can I relax into this? You don't want to make it a thing of like, okay, I just want to get off, like, let me just rush to the ejaculation and get it over with. That's when you're just, trying to numb yourself. Essentially, you're using it just to like escape. To use sexuality in a way that builds you up, you want to sustain it. You want to really be present with every moment of it. Breathe. It's like, what happens if I breathe fully from my belly as I'm experiencing sexual pleasure? It intensifies it, but it also makes it more sustainable. You can sustain more arousal for longer. And again, relaxing, letting go. So moving your body. So just think of it as like, it's kind of like, imagine you were, I guess this will be different based on where people are at, but imagine it's your first time experiencing sexual pleasure, like getting back into that mindset of just an exploration of your body. And again, making it internal, feeling, sensation, presence, instead of like, look at these body parts on the screen. Oh my God, I need to get a nut off.
Yeah, man. I think, at least personally, like growing up, like we think about like I think just the idea of masturbation alone already has some sort of kind of like a guilty connotation already. It's like when you tell someone, "Oh, hey, I masturbated the other day," it's almost like, "Wait, what?" And but even just I feel like even kind of like sound a little weirder with the idea of like not looking at anything external and just feeling that pleasure internally, right? That sounds so weird, but now I was like now after I have personally tried it, I feel like, oh my gosh, it changes everything in the external world. And yeah, to your point, like it is, I think porn is or I think like just that stimulation in general can really like drive up that tension and that kind of like desire or the impulse to like going for another nut instead of, oh, actually just be here, be present, and just let the energy build, let energy flow through your body and just feel that pleasure instead of kind of like seeking it from something else. Um and to me it's funny because I did realize this. I had this recent realization with myself, but I think ever since I was younger, since a teenager, I think I've always used sex or even porn at that time, whether it be a coping mechanism or not, but I will always use that as a way to get me back to feeling present. Even back then, I didn't know I was doing that for being present, but now I realize, like, yeah, all that pleasure I was feeling just so that I can feel present again. But then now, that kind of like now defeats the whole purpose of watching porn because now you're not even present anymore. Like you said, you kind of like out there somewhere on the internet watching either live people or images that are not live, and you kind of like sending your energy out instead of back to your body. And now your body is kind of like being left just limp and lifeless, right? So yeah, I think that's such a great advice that you're giving for people just to kind of like get back into their body and through whatever I think method or methodology or system that they practice, right? Whether it be yoga or breath work or qigong or sexual kung fu, whatever. I feel like as much as they can, getting back to the body, the better it would be.
Yeah, and I love that. And what one other piece is like, well, you just said the word love, loving yourself as well, like bringing your heart
Yeah,
into it as well. When
right.
sexual experience is all just like this heavy, lustful, animalistic impulse, there's nothing wrong with that type of experience. But when you can bring in this love, like, one of the basic practices we do is the inner smile, which is just essentially just think of radiating this smile from your heart, this heart
Mm.
energy. So when you bring that quality into your sexual experience, it changes it completely. Instead of just like, oh, I need to get off, it's like, oh, how do I love myself? How do I love my partner if I'm with my partner, and like love my entire body? And that completely changes the vibration of your sexual energy and your arousal.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Awesome, man. So yeah, um, I think before that's all the question I have so far. But before we wrap up today, Jonathan, is there anything else you want to share with the audience? Anything you got going on? Anything exciting with sexual kung fu you want to share?
Yeah, I have a book that I'm just finishing up. It's going to be coming out probably late October, probably by the end of, or sorry, late September, early October, probably by the I'm going to say by the end of October, the book will be available. So
All
I'm
right.
pretty stoked about that. It's going to be called Male Sexual Mastery Secrets. And yeah, I mean, there's lots of plans in store for the future of sexual kung fu, but nothing too much to announce right now.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. So yeah, for those who are watching and interested, I will drop the links to Jonathan's website and socials where you can reach him and his YouTube channel as well. We'll link a lot of his great content out there. But yeah, Jonathan, thank you for hopping on the podcast with me today. It's been my pleasure. And then yeah, hopefully we'll catch you on one of the future episodes.
Happy to be back, Vince. Thanks for having me. Always good to
Yep.
chat with you, man. And keep up the good work.
Yep. Thanks. I'm gonna hit the record.